This video is going to cover hooking TBS Crossfire up to a KISS setup. This rig has KISS flight controller and KISS 24 amp ESCs. This receiver right here is a FrSky, FreeSky XSR, and yeah, this smart port wire broke off, but it's normally soldered right there to aux1. These are all the connectors, wires, antennas. I removed the standard antenna, but you do get 2 of these in the package. I'm going to use an Immortal T in the end, so it's also just going to be easier to wire this up without this connected. Of all these wires, we're going to use this one. Just going to snip this side off, tin these ends here, and wire them in. Just like with FrSky, this is going to be your signal wire. We had S-Bus hooked up to that. This is 5 volt, this is ground, and then aux1 over here. Was on FreeSky. This is where the smart port was. You're going to wire that one up to channel 2 on the TBS receiver. It's labeled as such. So. I'm just too lazy to take that standoff off, but I'll get it. I decided to undo. I just pulled this connection, the telemetry wire out, and I twisted these wires. Just, I don't know, I've read where it can limit interference, electrical noise, I guess, interference, whatever. So I did that, and then I've attached the Immortal T on here, and then I'm going to just throw a little shrink wrap on there. Well, the battery died in my multimeter. I typically just do a continuity check in there, make sure I don't have any bridges. I also looked at the connections right there with a little, jeweler's loop or whatever, and there's no. Looks good to me. Anyway, here's the test, I guess. 5 volts, whatever. No power. Next I'll switch over and show you the binding. So common sense dictates that you should always start your radio with the internal module's antenna on. I did the 5 dB mod, so this is removable, and when I'm flying Crossfire, I will take this off once I'm in the proper model that is using the external module. If you didn't do the 5 dB mod, it's a moot point because obviously this antenna doesn't come off. Alright, so this is my model that I'm going to use with the Crossfire. The Tyrannus, the firmware I'm using a version of 2.2. And in the companion, when you go to download the firmware, you want to make sure that you have Lua, and I think there was another one that said Lua something. You need to make sure those checkboxes are checked so that when you bring it down, it has the Crossfire folder with the Lua scripts for binding and setting the different options in the transmitter and the receiver. So if you go into your model, let's see here. Obviously we want to turn off the internal transmitter. And as you see, I've already got my internal receiver turned off, and then set the external mode to CRSF. And that's it to get the radio to be ready to use the scripts. If you long press on menu, go to another page, you're going to see all these folders that are on the SD card, and you want to go to Crossfire. In there you'll see the crossfire.lua, and let me turn on my copter. Just plug it in the USB for now. Alright, so not enough room on my desk, but got it plugged in, powered. I'm going to press the button, the bind button, hold it for a second, and it's green and blinking at this point. Now we want to scroll down to this crossfire.lua, long press it, long press enter, and then enter again to execute. And you can see we've got micro TX, so you enter on that, and scroll down to binding, enter, update receiver, sure. You can't see it, but I'm looking at the light on my desk on the receiver. It's solid green at this point. Well, I guess the update is okay. And I still have my solid green light. So at this point I'm going to turn off the power on the quad, and I'm also going to exit out of here. Sorry, transmitter back on. Basically I want to check that when I power the quad back up it binds properly. Powering up the quad, and immediately I have the green light on the receiver. So I think that's it. Now let's look at the options we have back in that Lewis script for the Crossfire system. So long press on menu, one page over, scroll down into Crossfire, enter, scroll down to Crossfire.lua, long press, enter to execute. And of course now you see we have the option for both the transmitter and the receiver. So let's look at the options in the transmitter. I don't need to bind. I'm using region open, yes. I'm using the micro transmitter, so max power I can have is 100. I do not want to use dynamic power. I want all 100 watts for now. And it's my understanding US uses 915 megahertz. I don't know what op mode is, but normal worked on my other model, so. And you can see I'm running firmware 2.09. Out of the box, the firmware on the transmitter module was, I don't remember what it was, but I grabbed the TBS agent, installed it on my laptop, and I think 2.09 is a beta build, but like I said, I have this on a different quad and it's run flawlessly. So my experience has been that the beta build 2.09 was just fine. And now we're going to look at the settings on the receiver. Telemetry's on. Alright, there's the failsafe. So I want to put that on cut. That means whatever I set in the flight controller on KISS, it's there's an option for how many seconds, or maybe it's milliseconds, I don't know, you want it to do leveling, auto level, before it cuts the motors. I just put that on 0. The other option, I believe, is you can set your stick positions the way you want them, and then hit the set on the other module. You can hit the set failsafe, and it'll remember your stick position, switch positions. You know, the same way you used to do it on the old FR Sky receivers. Okay. Oops. Exit out of that. Now, Navlink I'm not using. I don't think you have to turn it off, but I'm turning it off. I'm not using S-Bus, but if I were, I would use 150 Hertz. And then output map. Alright, this is important. We want this to be on CRSF TX, and when we do that, it's because my model needs to be adjusted. When we set output 1 to CRSF TX, it automatically puts output 2 to CRSF RX. That's going to help with our telemetry and being able to change settings with the Lewis scripts for the KISS flight controller. Right, so I'm running KISS RC30, 1.3 RC30. So of course I have already loaded the KISS specific Lewis scripts onto my Tyrannus. You just unzip the package, drag it onto your SD card into the telemetry folder. It's important that you bring the KISS folder that's in there as well as the individual Lewis scripts. There's one for the flight controller, one I think when you're using S-port has a SP in it, and then there's a KISS CF. That's the one we want when we're using Crossfire. And that is the Lewis script that you choose on your screen to get it to display your PIDs. I set up a couple screens so that I could see various things on the, if I were flying line of sight or whatever, I could see visually telemetry. Also, you have to set up a page to be able to tune PIDs. So let's see, that is here. Alright, so top bar is obviously when you start the radio, it'll show you the voltage of the internal battery of the Tyrannus itself, and then there's another little symbol next to it. I use, this looks like receiver BAT. That's the right choice to be able to show how much voltage you have on the model itself, on your quad itself. I set this screen up here. You can see I'm looking at Crossfire. There's two different RSSIs. I don't know the difference between the two, so I added them both. And then I've got receiver link quality, and then I've also got transmitter link quality, and then there's that capacity I was talking about. That'll show you milliamp hour consumption. Farther down is where you do the KISS stuff. You just set screen 2 to use a script, and as you can see I'm using the KISS CF, and that'll expose your PIDs and all the good stuff. This is what those screens look like. So this was the one where I added the Crossfire telemetry values. Everything looks good. And then this is going to be, this is your KISS. Takes a second to show. But these are my PIDs. Press menu again. My rates. TPA, various settings. I have a beeper, so I want it to also beep at me if I use 1000 milliamps of my battery. And then these are my video transmitter settings. So that's how I set mine up. It works great. The performance benefit is definitely noticeable when you're using the CRSF protocol over S-Bus. Just feels tighter, more responsive. I love it. I'm going to do the last piece and I'll move over to a screen capture program and show you the few settings that you need to set up in the KISS GUI. Pretty easy. It's just for the receiver type you got to set it to TBS CRSF. I talked about in the KISS GUI we have to change the receiver. Most people know where it is, but I figured for completeness I would show it in the GUI on the screen capture. So configuration, receiver, obviously drop it down to TBS Crossfire. Previously I was on FrSky S-Bus, so change it there, hit save, good to go. Now obviously I had this set up earlier when I was showing you the screens and the telemetry. Had I not already done this, obviously that wouldn't have been possible. This is that TBS agent. Again, just figured I'd show it in case somebody's new and doesn't know where or what I was talking about. So I'm going to plug into the USB module. Plug the USB into the transmitter module on the back. Obviously, it comes right up. I'd mentioned I was on version 209, so I had to click the unstable releases, and at the time 209 was the most recent one. The reason I went to version 209 is I was trying to troubleshoot a problem. I wasn't able to get it to bind, and I thought it was a software problem. When in reality, I had a problem. The module where it plugged into the module bay on the back of the Tyrannus, the pins weren't lining up correctly with the holes in the plug on the back. So through trial and error, I realized that I needed to bend the pins a tiny bit to get them to interface with the socket properly. Once I did that, everything worked properly, but I was already on 209, and it worked perfectly fine. I did this on a different quad, and it's been great. So I guess I have some reading to do, see what version 211 adds. I don't see myself needing to change, but good to know anyway. So that's the TBS agent. Alright, so OpenTX. I mentioned you have to update to version OpenTX version 2.2. So you have to download the companion, and then make the proper selections in the firmware build. I'll show you that in a second. But you also need the SD card contents. So you click on that, you download it, you have that. You're going to then copy the contents onto your SD card in the Tyrannus. It says here, note that 2.2 uses version 10 instead of version 9. I'll show you what that means in a sec. Here's the contents of version 10. Some people just copy all this blindly over onto their SD card on the Tyrannus. I usually do it selectively. For one thing, the sound pack, you don't need, well, depends on what language you speak, but for me, I only copy over the English one. That saves tons of time. But this right here, if you don't pull the new version over onto your Tyrannus after you've upgraded to 2.2, you think you copy over all the files. Obviously, we really need this. This is the crux of having to do the update, or the requirement for Crossfires. You really want these updated Lua scripts. If you don't bring this card version file over, when you boot up your Tyrannus, it'll say expected version, version 10, and you need to copy that over, or else you get that warning. So, a little tidbit there. And then the firmware build selections in OpenTX Companion is in settings. Here's the Lua option you have to choose. I thought you used to have to do Lua C, but that's just a compiler, and obviously I don't have it selected, so I guess it's not needed. I also choose no heli because I'm not flying helis, so I don't need those mix screens on my radio. And then I don't remember why I have this alternate SQT5 font enabled, but it's enabled. And then lastly, I don't check this mass storage because I like to use my Tyrannus as, with flight simulators. if you have this checked and you plug your Tyrannus into your computer, it just acts like a USB drive. So I leave that unchecked, and that's it. So you make these selections, download the latest firmware, flash it onto your Tyrannus. After that, you copy over the contents of the SD card that you downloaded. Make sure you grab that file. I would only grab the sound pack that you need, and then the rest of the stuff you can pull over. I usually do them one by one. I just don't like to blindly copy stuff over. I might have telemetry scripts or who knows what. So I'm just cautious when I grab stuff and put it over. For instance, telemetry. It's not going to be in here because this isn't the contents on my Tyrannus, but all my KISS telemetry scripts are in here. Anyway, that's how I do it. I just selectively drag stuff over. And that's it. I know this was a rambling video, but I just wanted to cover all the stuff. Most of it's pretty basic for people who've done this before, but I figure the new guy might be trying to find some information, and I just kind of wanted to cover it all, or the majority of it, all in one video. So, hope you enjoyed it.